good PowerPoint, but this time I am prepared.
All right. If you just do it, it'll turn out okay. Welcome to the most hard to schedule podcast I've had in a while.
I know. It's all on me.
Well, me too, kind of. Last Tuesday, we were last Tuesday, but then I had a headache and couldn't function.
Yeah, but the thing is yeah, trying to function with trying to do a podcast with a headache. That does not sound fun to me.
I'm sure you all know my guest, Erica, the Get Sick Gibbon.
That's me. I'm here to talk about primate migrations today.
Yeah, she recently did a video on it about the I think it was Homo habilis migrating to possibly be the ancestor of the pygmy.
Yeah, Homo floresiensis. Yeah. So there's some really interesting stuff about that. We're going to be touching on big P primates today. Like we're looking at how primates have moved and spread out from the first U primate all the way to humans. So it's going to be a cool one.
I recently, off topic, well, not on topic, I mean, but I recently found out that primates might not have originated in Africa, but might have originated in North America.
Yeah, so the thing is it depends on what you mean by primate, right? It depends on where we draw the line, and with the sort of primatomorphs to true primates. And that can be a pretty difficult line to draw because the primatomorphs are very similar to primates. They just don't have that same termination and they lack a few key features. So we'll get into that. We'll be getting into that.
Yeah, well, if we start, at least before I started this, I've only known of 6 migrations. The first one I knew of was the New World monkeys jumping over to South America.
Mm-hmm.
Then the orangutans and gibbons going over to Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Homo habilis, Homo erectus group, the Neanderthals, and then us.
Yeah, so I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It turns out that I had a pretty good time researching this because most of my knowledge of how primates have moved around has been pretty biased towards the human end. But the interesting thing is that since the inception of primates, they've been moving about and establishing new occupations and in new niches and new habitats. And they've been doing this for, since about 50 million years ago, which is a long time to be moving around the continents, especially when the continents are crashing together and separating and doing all of the things that continents do. So I think you'll be interested in, I know for a fact that we're going to be covering one that you know of, but you didn't just mention, but you definitely know it. You definitely know it.
All right, let's educate me.
All right, cool. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. You guys tell me when you can. You tell me when you can see it. Okay, let's see my entire screen. Share. And can you see?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Cool. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Primate migrations, monkeys on the move. So yeah, that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, migration is kind of a tricky term. I think that migration is a word that encompasses what we're talking about the best, which is species moving to a new location. Now, migration too can also mean like single populations, a single species moving from one place to another and then returning to some kind of homeland, like how birds tend to do seasonally and the wildebeest do. But in this case, for the sake of this presentation, when we talk about migrations, we're essentially talking about radiations. We're talking about spreading out to new locations and establishing new areas of habitation. So,
quick question: can you name all the ones that you have on the screen?
I can name some of them, but some of them can be a little bit weird. So this is obviously proboscis monkey. This one is an orang. This one is likely a black-crested gibbon, or maybe a hulock gibbon, meaning the lack of the tail is the dead giveaway, the long arms. This one its face is covered up because of the primate migrations, but it is a gorilla. This one back here, I'm not sure who this is supposed to be. This one might be some kind of leaf monkey. This is definitely a guinin, and then I can't tell who this is, and this looks like a chimp to me. This looks like it's supposed to be a chimp. So we'll see though. These, you know, the old school drawings can get a little. I find them very charming, as you can see. Like I used to have a background with a ton of them, but they can be pretty like weird. All right. So we have to discuss in any discussion about how primates have moved around. We have to establish who the first primate is. So the first true primate is a matter of pretty consistent debate. But it currently looks like the first euprimate, that is to say, true primate, is Alteolaceus Kulkii. I think so. I always just call it Alteolaceus, so it's, you know, I'm not used to saying the species name because the weird thing about this genus is that there's only one species, and it's this one, Kulkii. So I always just say Alteolaceus. But needless to say, that's this little guy here on the left. So this organism was found in Morocco, and it dates to around 57 million years ago, which is why when we talk about when did primates originate, you pretty consistently will get a range, right? You're not going to get like the first primate is here because we don't know for sure. All we know is that we have for sure a fossil of Alteolaceus at around 57 million years ago, and it looks to be a euprimate, which is awesome. Primatomorphs, though, can be found a lot earlier, and they range from North America all the way through Eurasia because these continents were potentially contiguous at the time. It means that they were, you know, there were ways to get from one side of North America to the other side of Eurasia. So the primatomorphs that, you know, that would be your Plesiodaphiforms essentially. So Plesiodapis would be a great example. Purgatorius is kind of weird. We're not 100% sure where that one belongs. But yeah, you can look at these guys and you can tell some immediate differences. For the record, I'm not including a ton of fossils in this presentation just because since we're not discussing general morphology very much, I think that the reconstructions and the drawings are a little bit cuter. They kind of help put you in the time period.
So at least according to this thing, possibly the primates were after the dinosaurs, at least the non-avian dinosaurs went bye-bye, and then the primatomorphs were before.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So the primatomorphs likely occupied the same land as the dinosaurs did during the same time periods. The classic dinosaurs probably saw primatomorphs around them, but true euprimates didn't really get this opportunity to radiate out into all of these different forms until after the dinosaurs were gone. And, you know, presumably this is because there was all of a sudden this just niche deficit. There were all of these open areas to exploit new habitats and new diets and new modes of locomotion without worrying that you're going to get gobbled up by some theropod.
By the way, do you do primatomorphs too, or do you cut the line off at primates?
I cut the line off at euprimates. I've talked about primatomorphs on my channel before, but the thing is that that line is so blurry that really and truly, even if you consider euprimates, like you still might be lumping in some primatomorphs. Like we're just not 100% sure where to draw the line. Usually with primates, it comes down to the distal ends of the limbs, so ability, you know, the ankles and the wrists to climber about in the trees, and dentition. So those are going to be your two biggies when it comes to what is a primate.
Oh, I got a question for you.
Yes, please.
Right there on the screen, you can read it.
No, I'll have to get out of my thingy, but I can. Hold on. Let me zip over to the Zoom. Would humans have evolved if the asteroid never wiped out the dinosaurs? Oh, that's a great question. I think no. I think there's almost a 0% chance that we get anything even close to humans. When I say that, I mean we're probably not even getting into like your larger catarrhine primates, I would say. I think
Inception.
Yeah, oh yeah, look at this. Yeah. I would say that if we've got dinosaurs still kicking around, nothing very big mammal-wise is going to be able to take hold.
Yeah. This is why I love having two monitors.
Yeah, I know. That's my deficit because I've got to inceptionize us. So this is where these two guys are found. So remember earlier when you mentioned that it's possible that primates evolved in North America. So that's been kicked around. And the reason that that's been kicked around is because it's definitely a possibility. It's certainly possible that primates evolved in North America and radiated out and ended up, you know, in areas like Morocco. After all, they had a long time to get there. So it's, you know, or it could be the result of some convergent evolution going on for all of a sudden taking over these arboreal habitats. It could be either way, but this is where these two dudes are found. So Now, widespread primate and primatomorph occupation. So with this in mind, we can understand that at 57 million years ago, the first known euprimates and the first primatomorphs occupied an insane range. Now, when I say first primatomorphs, I mean that these are like our first recognizable primatomorphs, even though, as we understand, species divergence and speciation are indeed two separate things. So even though some of the first primatomorphs that we find are pretty late, you know, we're talking barely into the Cretaceous, they probably were around a little bit before then. So I probably could have phrased this better. But they had this insane range. They lived in North America, Eurasia, and Northern Africa. Now it's the dawn of the Eocene, so it's warm, and it's a perfect time to proliferate if you're a little mammal. But as time stretches on into the Oligocene and onward, the evolution of the euprimates is going to become restricted to the warmth of the tropics, and the classic Plesiadaepiforms are going to disappear entirely. So, you know, classic Plesiadaepiforms, I mean the big names. It's always possible that you see persistence for quite some time after the fossils that we find. But for the current knowledge, classic Plesiadaepiforms do indeed disappear by the Oligocene. Prior to this, though, Africa is going to see the arrival of an Eosimiid, formerly called Asia its home. So these are omomyids. This is going to be a very early omomyid that's very similar to a tarsier, but it had dentation closer to an anthropoid primate. So the thinking is that, okay, well, it's very possible that this is going to be the ancestor of all of the anthropoids. So now we've got something kind of weird going on, right? We've got primates, true euprimates, just all over the northern hemisphere. So this little guy on the upper left, this is Darwinius massilae, and this little fella, actually little lady, before going off of the holotype, was found in the Messel Pit in Germany. And then down here we have Runweia, which I actually didn't know about until today when I was gathering some pictures for this, and we're going to talk about this one in just a second. And then over here we have Eosimius.
So you learned something new too then.
I know, I did. I actually did, because here's something that's really, really cool. So these guys, Darwinius massilae and Eosimias, are going to be the first things that are kind of looking like real primates, and they're all in the east. And from here on out, most of the things that look like legitimate primates are hanging out in the east, like what we think of when we think of primates. But you have this foreshore primate that looks a whole lot like a tarsier in Texas. And it's not just there for the rodeo. You know what I mean? So here's the question. Did primates originate in North America and expand outward, eventually colonizing the east? Of course, they couldn't quite get to South America yet because for whatever reason, the currents weren't allowing rafting there at the time, and it would have been a lot easier to go east than it would be to go south. So either they originated in North America and spread outward, or they originated over here in Eurasia and expanded westward. But one way or another, or we've got something really, really convergent going on, like just ridiculously convergent, and maybe it's possible that Ruweia isn't even a primate, it's just very similar sister species. But it could be either way.
So like maybe like there's two primorphs on each side of the earth, and then one of the primorphs, what's it called? Like when when Latin turned into Italian, this staying still thing?
Oh yes, stasis, right. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. That's the interesting thing about this. I tend to lean towards the idea that because it's very likely that we had contiguous continents up here, that we probably saw a rapid diversification of really, really early euprimates like Altulacius that expanded outward, and for whatever reason, the ones that stayed in North America just never got big.
This is what the continents looked like back then. Their shape still,
Yeah, 50 million years ago. This is what I found as an accurate representation.
It almost looks, except for South America and North America together, it almost looks like what we have now.
Yeah, it looks pretty similar.
Minus the massive ocean.
Yeah, and Europe is a mess. Europe is just absolutely a pit up here. But you know, it makes island hopping really easy if you're a little bitty primate. So now we have to talk about something really cool, the tropical FAYUM. So the FAYUM is this location in modern-day Egypt. It's not typically a place that you would think would be, you know, the go-to for ancient primates. But in the Oligocene, the FAYUM was this super lush, ridiculously humid location. It was a playground for these first true anthropoid primates. So when I say anthropoid primates, I mean no lemurs, lorises, or galagos. Your anthropoids are going to include your Old World monkeys and your New World monkeys. So tarsiers are also excluded.
They've already went over the Madagascar at this point.
We're going to touch on the lemurs a little bit later.
Okay.
The lemurs, we're coming back to see the lemurs in a second. So put a pin in the Strepsirrhines for now. So the Oligocene is going to be this period that South America is also going to see the arrival of their own primates, likely these rafters from Africa, and it's probably going to be proteopithecids. So parapithecids, oligopithecids, propliopithecids, and proteopithecids are all going to see this mass diversification in Africa. And if you don't want to learn the difference between those, good decision, because they're very similar. Those guys are all really similar. The only thing you need to know is that proteopithecids have a dentition of an old or of a New World monkey, which is really interesting because, you know, all of these other guys have the classic 2-1-2-3 formula that we see in Old World monkeys that we as humans have, but proteopithecids have the 2-1-3-3. So they've got 3 premolars, typically. Some of them have lost them in the modern day, but, you know, ancestral stock, that's going to be their classic dentition. So this is a cool picture of the FAYUM, like what maybe the FAYUM would have looked like. And you've just got all of these different, like, anthropoid primates living together and occupying this zone at the same time. Because something that isn't really appreciated, or I don't think is appreciated very often, is that right after the dinosaurs went extinct in our KPG extinction, we see this weird dwarfing going on in all of the mammals around the world, because nothing has really had a chance to grow in size and seize niches that are perfect for larger animals. So things are just kind of little. It probably would have been very cute. and that would have been the same case over in the FAYUM. You've got a bunch of these relatively small monkeys hanging out, chilling, doing their thing, and basically occupying the cohabiting this same location, the FAYUM being this, and I mean the Nile wasn't even a thing yet. So this is a cool location. So why is the FAYUM important? Why do I keep harping on it? It's essentially the cradle of the catarrhines. By the middle of the Oligocene, the Old and New World monkeys had likely already split, with a small band of maybe proteopithecids of a very diminutive size having made their way to South America by accidental rafting. Now, people like to diss the rafting hypothesis because they think that it's not very likely. And when I say people, I mean creationists. And that's ridiculous because, one, the currents were very different. It would have been, I think, if my memory serves, it would have taken about 11 days to raft over, straight over to South America from Africa, which isn't too bad. But furthermore, the animals that we're talking about here, the first proteopithecids that made it over there, it's looking like they were probably very small. And I can back that up with a pretty recent study that is
like a bottleneck thing.
Yeah. And it probably wasn't 2 also. Like, it was probably a small population of them that made it all the way over there. And if memory serves too, primates aren't the only ones that got there by rafting, which suggests that large storms that maybe battered the western coast of Africa were just up to no good and washing animals over. But yeah, so the hominoids, basically the apes, we don't see any of these guys yet. Apes aren't around at this point in time. They're still just all we're seeing really is the Old World monkey type.
We still have our tail. Everyone still have their tails.
Oh yeah, everyone's got tails. It's big tail energy going on right now. And the Old World monkeys are seemingly limited to Africa. So while there's still primates in other locations at this time, none of them look like what we think of when we think of a monkey, right? Even in Asia, Asia's still got these tarsiers running around. They've got like omomyids just doing their deal, very similar to eosimias that we just mentioned. But yeah, nothing like what we typically think of when we think of a monkey. It wouldn't be long before the Miocene would come, though, and when the Miocene shows up, we get a real live Planet of the Apes with large-bodied tailless primates that are actually just living in Europe and in Asia. And this
Miocene, is that when they got cold, started getting cold, like the Ice Age came around?
No, the Miocene is actually still decently warm-ish. I mean, it's not going to be like Pliocene weather that's pushing everything back into Africa. We're still pretty good weather-wise, but we're going to talk about the Miocene in a second, because the Miocene brings one of the big pressures of the Miocene is going to be the emergence of grasslands. So yeah, so the diversification that we see of the Miocene apes, though, never would have happened if we didn't get this crazy experimentation by the monkeys that lived in the FAYUM. So here's some very cool monkeys that lived all around the world during the time period that we're kind of considering here. Again, we've got Ruangwea over here, or Ruangwea, sorry, over here, just still chilling, big chilling in Texas. And we've got Oligotarsius over here in China. Way down here, this little like brown fellow is going to be Opidium, chilling also in the FAYUM, Aegyptopithecus in the FAYUM, and Catopithecus in the FAYUM. So these guys are all just relaxing, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool. So what were the lemurs doing? That's what you said earlier, and that's the one that I remember that I was like, he's forgetting the lemurs, because everyone knows the lemurs. How did they end up in Madagascar? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I didn't know if they went to Madagascar themselves or Madagascar took them with them when it left.
Yeah, no, but you were right the first time. Yeah, they migrated. They ended up in Madagascar, and the migration to Madagascar, weirdly enough, based on the currents, would have taken less time than it took for the proteopithecids to get to South America. So it would have taken about 30 days to get from the Horn of Africa to Madagascar. So the strepsirrhines, here's something weird though that I don't think people tend to appreciate. The strepsirrhines in general are going to enjoy this weirdly broad occupation of the globe before they end up isolated in Madagascar, and after that too. So 30 million years ago, we find lemur-like primates like bug-to-lemur, that can be, found in like Pakistan, India, these kinds of locations. And lemurs ended up in Madagascar at like 40 to 52 million years ago. So basically, even though the lemurs became isolated in Madagascar, other lemurs who weren't isolated in Madagascar were big chilling outside of that island nation for quite some time. So what happened, right? Why did lemurs disappear everywhere besides Madagascar? And the idea is that they were basically just outcompeted during the Miocene, and this island nation of Madagascar becomes their last stronghold. And of course, they're still there today. And the diversification that we see in Madagascar, just because it's such a weird habitat, is going to yield the mega lemurs. So you get gorilla-sized lemurs like Archaeoindris. And that's some of these guys we see over here on the side. I mean, these guys just look like gorillas, right? Except they've got these little snouts. They would have been really cute. It would have been like if you crossed a bear and a gorilla, probably. But yeah, we've got some really good teeth and jaws from Archaeoindris. And I think there's another more Archaeoindrids that we have too that weren't quite as big as, I always can never pronounce this one, Fontoyontii.
Yeah, the baby looks cute, but the mama or daddy looks kind of, I want to mess with him.
I wouldn't want to mess with, I wouldn't either. Yeah. And so, yeah, something that's interesting about this too is that, and this is like a side note that I think is, maybe I'm the only one, but I think this is interesting. So there's this phenomena in sexual dimorphism called Wrench's rule. And it's essentially this idea that the larger the animal gets, the more likely it is to be sexually dimorphic. Because females tend to occupy ideal body size given an environment or a habitat, and males occupy the extremes of competition, typically. This is not by any stretch of the imagination a rule in the sense that it's called Wrench's rule. Like, we see violations to this all the time. And these indrids are a perfect example of that, because we have male and female Archaeoindris, and they're the same size. So we've got these huge gorilla bear things wandering around Madagascar, and they're monomorphic, which is to be expected because almost all lemurs are monomorphic, which is pretty rare among or not rare, it's just uncommon in primates for the males and females to be like identical, basically. Usually they've got, different colored pelage, like their fur is different, or they're different sizes, or they have different sized canines, whatever. But yeah, the lemurs don't really care about that. They're kind of just like, yeah, no, it's good, we're good. And the big lemurs were no exception. So now we got to ring in the Miocene. I love the Miocene. The Miocene is our planet of the apes, and it's a game changer for primates in general because, like I said, you get this establishment of the grasslands, and this is a new niche for intrepid monkeys. They can be gramnivores, they can eat grass, and they can be omnivores. They can come down from the trees. So the sweeping grasslands spanned even up into Europe, which led to the evolution of this insane variety of new primates called apes. So yeah,
Never heard of them before.
Yeah, I know. They're so interesting. So the duration of the Miocene sees apes in Europe. These would be like your Dryopithecids, Africa, which is your proconsolids and the hominoids, and in Asia, which would be your Asian hominoids and some Dryopithecids that managed to make it over there. So the human lineage is just a small piece of the pie. So let's look at Africa first. So these are the reconstructions and drawings and things like that. But our proconsolids, which are ape-like primates, are going to be pretty isolated to East Africa. Maybe. And the reason I say maybe is because it's really possible that these guys were everywhere and East Africa was just really good at preserving them. But some of these guys here that we see are really, really cool, and I love them. So this guy right here is going to be, or girl, I should say, is going to be Afropithecus. So Afropithecus has big, big canine teeth in males and females because they probably use them to process food. So they use them like big can openers to feed on like hard fruits and stuff like that. Which is awesome. Proconsul was up here on the upper right, and these guys can be found. Some of our best representation of them is actually found on an island in Lake Victoria, which is neat because it's just like you've got this island of apes just big chilling out there, which, you know, I like that. I think that's cool. And Limnopithecus is also chilling out during this time period. Limnopithecus is going to be here on the bottom right, and then Dendropithecus, which is going to be over here on the left. So these are all just some cool African apes. I don't know. I like them. They're proconsolids though, so they're not true hominoids. And of course, Sahelanthropus chilensis. We love Sahelanthropus chilensis. This is our very late Miocene ape from about 7 million years ago. Probably, I say probably, let me rephrase that, potentially the first in our lineage. And the reason we say that is because it possesses several derived characteristics, which make it a really good candidate. And it's found in Chad, so it's the right location too. But we also have apes just relaxing in Europe, which is really neat. You know, we love seeing the apes in Europe, which I don't know. I like the idea of it. So Dendropithecus is going to be hanging out around here.
Yeah, I've heard about the European apes recently. I'm not sure when they left our family tree.
Yeah, so they would have gone up there pretty early, and I just said Dendropithecus. What I meant to say was Pliopithecus. Dendropithecus and Pliopithecus are always depicted as having like similar fur color, which is this weird brown and white. But Pliopithecus is in the Czech Republic. Oreopithecus is going to be in Italy. They actually call this one the abominable coal man, which is just silly, but they found it in a coal mine. Like, so it's, you know, whatever. I like it. It's kind of dumb. Oranopithecus is going to be big chillin' in Greece. And then we have Pierolopithecus over in Spain. And these guys they're all just really cool. You know, some of them, mainly Oreopithecus, have these, they look like secondary adaptations for walking on two legs. And I say secondary because this guy wouldn't have been walking everywhere strolling on 2 feet, but it's certainly more adapted than, say, Pierolopithecus or Pliopithecus or, you know, Oranopithecus here. It's just interesting. It's neat. Maybe if we find out those Trachelos footprints are legitimate, we can pin them on Oreopithecus. Except they're not, right? The Trachelos prints are dumb. And then, of course, we have our beginning of an expansion into Southeast Asia with Shivapithecus, which is hanging out in India. And as you said, the gibbons are also on the move, but they have a much poorer fossil record. So we're just going to talk about Shivapithecus because Shivapithecus is cute. This is potentially the ancestor of all the orangs, which is neat.
Yeah, it's too bad apparently forests and jungles aren't very good for fossils, as I've heard.
Oh, I know. Isn't that so sad? Okay, so the Pliocene, all about ARDI. So the next 2 epochs, the Pliocene and the Pleistocene, we're going to see temperatures drop. It's going to push the primates back into the warmer tropics. This is going to be your death knell for the European apes, sadly. And those apes that are not firmly established in Asia. In the latter, only Gigantopithecus and the Hylobatids, as well as the ancestors of modern orangs, so potentially something like Shivapithecus, would seemingly eke out a living. So this is going to be an interesting deal, right? Because it seems like, based off of the patterns that we're seeing spread across the Middle East, Europe, and Southeast Asia, that we would have had a pretty decent like menagerie of apes living in Asia during this time period. But the problem is they couldn't handle the change in climate, which probably fragmented a lot of the forests. And we see 2 extremes on how organisms adapted. The Hylobatids got really small and went up in the trees. And the Gigantopithecids were just like, no, we're going to get bigger. And that's what they did. And the Gigantopithecids did really well for themselves until about 10,000 years ago, when humans, I think it was 10,000 years ago, when humans kind of roasted them and they couldn't really hang around anymore. But yeah, so then we also see in Africa, ape diversity is also going to drop dramatically, and the monkeys are going to start flourishing instead. And that's why today, if we consider the Miocene the age of the planet of the apes, we would call today the planet of the monkeys, just because the monkeys have this insane diversity by primate standards today. I mean, we've got insane guinin diversity, we've got langur diversity, macaques, baboons, all of the New World monkeys, leaf monkeys. It's just insane. Lots of different monkeys.
Real fast, we have a question that says, Erica, do we have a good idea of the family lineage that led to Gigantopithecus?
No, we don't. So I've heard a couple of people propose that it's going to be from the stock like Shivapithecus that just kind of blew up in size. I don't know that that's the case though, because if memory serves, when I was looking into this previously, there are some diagnostic skull characteristics that don't seem to resonate with Shivapithecus through to Gigantopithecus. It's possible. You would think that it would be a better case though, right? Because Gigantopithecus is like a big orang. That's usually what it's presented as. But we actually don't know that it's a big orang because the fossil record for Gigantopithecus is pretty limited to teeth and jaws. Like, I don't think we have much, if any, postcrania. So we don't really know much about it besides the fact that it was a big ape. I mean, so we'll see though. Hopefully we figure more out. The gibbons, I saw the other day that there was a recent discovery of some nice gibbon postcrania in Asia. That's like the oldest postcrania of a hylobatid that we have. So maybe, I'm holding out hope that we'll see more for Gigantopithecus too. It would be really nice to get like a full skeleton or even like mostly complete. But yeah, unfortunately during this time period, like it's just not owing itself to great fossilization for a lot of our primates in general, let alone like the ones that are living, ones that are living in these forests.
So it's getting colder, plus there's more grass, there's less trees and more grass.
Previously, that's how it was. Like the more grass was a nice consequence of the Miocene. But as we get into the Pliocene, everything is kind of being squished back into Africa and into the line of the equator. So yeah, it's the grass is probably still just fine, but the apes, yeah, they're not. It's the climate is becoming too much for them up north. So they don't really survive past the Miocene, unfortunately, which sucks. Like it would be awesome if we still had crazy ape diversity today, but we just don't. But in Africa, even though the diversity is dropping, this is presenting an excellent opportunity for some plucky hominins that are going to manage to survive and dominate this period. And at this point, this is going to be the Ardipithecus genus. So Ardipithecus cadava.
Too bad those hominid apes didn't survive at all.
Yeah, well, that's the irony, right? Is that it's like the hominoids weren't doing so hot when compared to the proconsolids. But all of a sudden, the hominoids just really explode in this time period, and they're just doing really, really well. So here's some Ardipithecus ramidus, like a little Ardipithecus ramidus family hanging out in the left, and they're found in Ethiopia. So yeah, and I love Ardipithecus. I think it's really cool. They're sexually monomorphic, which is neat for an ape.
You'll tell them look out behind them.
Yeah, I know. Really. Yeah, the deer sees it, but they don't. Luckily, they're in the trees. Hopefully, they'll do okay. So the Pleistocene comes next. The Pleistocene and the hominin hustle. So hominins exploded in diversity during the Pleistocene. The Australopithecines likely emerged from the previously mentioned Ardipithecus stock and would see two main morphs, the gracile forms, so Australopithecus in the classic sense, and you get Anamensis, Afarensis, and Africanus, and their robust form. And the reason I call them Australopithecines is because they can be called Australopithecines, but I was taught to call them Paranthropines. So you get Paranthropus aethiopicus, robustus, and boisei, and those are those big-faced, bipedal, living alongside early and mid-Homo apes. They just, they're megadonts. They've got these honking molars, and they're just grinding things and chilling out on the savannah. So, Paranthropines did okay. And then from the gracile Australopithecines, we see the genus Homo emerge and bloom. And members of the Homo genus would leave Africa and eventually colonize the entire planet. The details of this are very, very involved because potentially multiple species left Africa at different junctures, Homo habilis, erectus, and Homo sapiens. So I picked this chart because I like it. I think that it's a pretty easy one to understand, even though I don't 100% agree with it just because it's not what I was taught. So what we see here is Europe at the top, Africa and the Near East, and Asia and Australia. And early Homo is this big line right here, and we see, whoop, there's the first departure, and you end in Homo floresiensis, early Homo. So that's in line with what we currently, the current literature with Homo floresiensis emerging from like habilis probably. But then the interesting thing is we see this split off right here in this stalk with the Dmanisi specimens and into Eastern Homo erectus. So that's going to be like your Denisovans specimens, right? And the Northern Homo erectus is sometimes what the Dmanisi specimens are called because they've got such small brain cases, even though their postcrania is pretty derived. And that's where you're going to see, those Eastern guys headed out there. So this whole area is pretty ancient. This is a pretty ancient like departure from Africa, but they did really well because they lasted a long time.
Yeah, I've heard that Erectus was like the longest living Homo species we had.
Yeah, Erectus does really well. And here's the thing though. So you can say Erectus lasted for a really long time, and that's true even if you split it into multiple species, because it's looking more and more like we see Homo erectus, right? Erectus proper. And then we also have Homo ergaster, which is like small-brained Homo erectus. And that's what you see here. So Homo ergaster is kind of an early guy hanging out, right? And would eventually yield 3 stalk of Homo heidelbergensis. And heidelbergensis is where you're going to see humans essentially come from, and Neanderthals. So heidelbergensis leaves, and you see, Neanderthalensis come from that.
And the Denisovans.
Denisovans. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's looking like we're seeing heidelbergensis yield Denisovans, in my opinion, because we see this extra emergence here, and then we see Denisovans Denisovans diversifying too a little bit later. The real question is what's going on with this line here, this Homo erectus line that like kind of diversifies out into Asia. And they kind of just do Homo erectus things in Asia and then kind of die out. And then
I was wondering about Homo. Why do you opinion question for you? Why do you think that Homo erectus never? I think the land bridge might have been there by now. Why do you think they ever went over the land bridge to North America?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good question. If I had to guess, I think it's just because Homo erectus, the species, we don't really find it as far north as we find the Neanderthals, late Homo sapiens, or rather archaic Homo sapiens, and Denisovans. And in my opinion, that's because it just didn't reach the cognitive capability to be able to cope with that kind of weather. And physically, it wasn't able to do it either. So, Neanderthals, they go pretty far north, and that's because they are wearing clothes, right? Like they're wearing furs. They know how to use fire, like adeptly.
So maybe Homo heidelbergensis were the first one to invent clothes.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so that's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I hesitate to say yes or no on that because, as far as I know, there could have been a population of like literally Homo habilis that was like, hey, what if I put on the skin of this dead thing that I just ate bones from and carrion? So
I guess it might be also the thing that when we lost the excess fur and the thinner hair and stuff.
Yeah, so the fur is a biggie, and the thing is like that was a huge benefit to us losing that fur because it lets us sweat really well, as you know. But the additional problem with that is now we can't readily go north, right? Until we take the fur of other things and wear it instead. So that's the bummer of it all, right? Is that it's like, we just lost this and now we need it again. And, luckily we were intelligent. Our ancestors and cousins were intelligent enough to figure out that you could just take it from the things you're eating. But yeah, if I had to guess, I would think Erectus just didn't cross the land bridge because land bridge was so far north. And going up there and crossing it would require being able to stay warm. And while we know Erectus used fire, I don't think fire is going to be good enough. Like, it's not a good enough substitute for clothes, at least not all the time. So it's a tricky one. I think we're going to continue to find more out about our ancestors in that sense, who was using what and when. I mean, there was a paper just this year that showed us that Neanderthals were doing knots. Like, they were capable of making knots and using ropes and things like that, which is a huge step. I mean, God, that's an insane level of cognition. So
Yeah, it's weird. The Homo habilis, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans. It's weird.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, they split enough to be different species, but not far enough that we couldn't get on with them.
No, I know. That's a dicey thing, and that really threw a wrench into this idea of like, okay, well, are they separate species or are they not? Now, I am of the personal opinion that you can be reproductively, capable with one another as a species, as two separate species, just because we know that like American paddlefish and Chinese paddlefish can interbreed, and they're definitely separate species. So I think that reproductive isolation isn't necessarily the only way that we can see speciation. I think that novel genetic and morphologic characteristics can sometimes be adequate. But it really all boils down to the fact that species are arbitrary human concepts, right? Like species are just something that we made up so that we can comprehend how many animals there are.
So is this us then?
Sorry, repeat that.
So this is us, I'm guessing.
Oh, yes. Sorry, the chart. Yes, yeah, this is us. So this is the migrations of human populations, and it's got this cute color-coded graph here. And I just like it. I think it's a cool graph that shows in a relatively intuitive way when things happened and where we arrived various places. So you'll notice the blue, the cooler colors are going to be pretty late. This is like a recent arrival, right, in these locations.
This is thousands of years, like 200,000 years, 15,000 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's recent. Yeah, and all these darker reds and hotter colors too. It's interesting that we see this movement up through the Middle East, and then they're just like shoo right into Australia. I like that. I think that's kind of a cool deal. And we see relatively early emergence in like Asia and in Europe around the same time periods, and then like pretty late. They're getting up north pretty late, and that's because those climates are a lot to deal with.
Hey, another question for you. I know that we met up with the Neanderthals in Europe and stuff, but did we meet up with the Homo? Did we overlap with the Homo erectus at all, or were they gone by the time we got there?
It's anyone's guess. I would say yes. I am of the opinion that Homo erectus probably lasted a lot longer than we give it credit for. Typically, in a lot of charts and papers and things that you see, you're going to see the succession of Homo erectus, like Asian, European, and African Homo erectus, by Denisovans, Heidelbergensis, and Sapiens, respectively. Which is great. I mean, that's cool. But at the same time, it's like I don't know. I find it really hard to believe that Homo erectus, being such a prolific species, is just going to up and disappear right when we see diversification like that. And really and truly, you could just, given how morphologically diverse some people like to categorize Homo erectus as, you could almost just keep those labels, right? It's a weird one. I think Homo erectus lasted longer than we say it did. That's the long and short of it. I think we're going to find support for that at some point, but that's just me. Anyways, hominins are awesome. That's the long and short of it. But yeah, then we see some other cool primates in the Pleistocene. This is my last slide. I just wanted to talk about these guys because I like them. We already talked about Archaeoindris, so our big lemurs, and about Gigantopithecus as well. But Therapithecus and Dinopithecus are also really cool, and these are just giant baboons and geladas. Like, they're just huge. We're talking, like, as you can see in this picture here, like lion-sized. And that would have been very intimidating. So I don't know. I like them. That's all I've got.
Yeah, I saw. I recognize that other picture with the Gigantopithecus and the tiger running away.
Yeah, that's from Eons. I cribbed it from Eons. All right. Let me just pull up the chat here, just in case we want to answer any questions before we move on. Pull you up here. And hold on, it's definitely just about to show the
Eons. I cribbed it from Eons.
I knew it. Okay. All right, sweet. Yeah, so that's all I got.
All right, sweet. Oh, so, oh.
Yeah, so any other questions or anything like that before I go get dinner?
Yeah, off topic. I think it's so are you gonna put your skulls out for decoration Halloween?
Yeah, the thing is that this is a year round. My skulls are year round. I just love them. But yeah, I'll probably put like a Santa hat on the hominin and on our afarensis and also on our Smilodon for Christmas and stuff like that. They're spooky enough as it is to be like Halloween decorations though. So just leave them hanging around.
So, oh, do I've heard of the gibbons and the orangutans because I've heard that they migrated to Asia and then we migrated back to Africa.
That they did that?
Yeah, all of us,
Oh yeah.
In general, left Africa, went to Asia to do the gibbon and the orangutan thing. Then we, as the gorillas, chimps, human lineages, went back to Africa after that.
Yeah. I don't think there's any support for that. I think that it's way more, given just how many apes were hanging around too in Europe. I think that if you're gonna say that something came back to Africa rather than evolving there, which is the current support, is that it's likely a shoot off from the proconsolids or from the stock that proconsolids and hominoids came from. But yeah, I think if you're gonna say that, then there's just not enough support for it. If you're going to be like some kind of ape came back into Africa and evolved there, if anything, it's going to be one of the dryopithecids hanging out in Europe. Okay. But I don't think there's any support for that.
Oh, somebody says he had a question about the Sibida up above.
Oh, Sediba. Yeah, wait, let me see. Let's see. I see Gigantopithecus. I like a teacup. Okay, no, I don't see that. Hold on, I'm looking for it. Scott, I'm looking. Hold on, I'm still checking. Maybe I missed it. If you see it, holler.
Well, there's
fence body. Teacup. Okay. Okay, Standing for Truth and okay, it was in Speed's channel the other day talking a long Lee Burger calling Sediba mixed species, like several different species. But yeah, no, there's no way. First of all, I think that I have not seen anything by Lee Burger suggesting that Lee Burger thinks that Australopithecus sediba is a mix of two hominins. But on top of that, the literature alone precludes the double hominin thing. And I'm planning on going over this very, very soon. If anything, to what Standing basically points to a single paper for that claim. He points to a paper by Ella Bin and Yoel Rock that looks at the lumbar vertebra of the Malapa hominins, MH1 and MH2, and they're basically like, yeah, we think that that MH1 is of one kind of hominin, that the lumbar vertebra are of one kind of hominin, and that the lumbar vertebra of MH2 are of a completely different kind of hominin. And let's grant, first of all, that's from an unpublished work by Ella Bin and Yoel Rock. That was not published in any kind of journal, nothing like that. It's something you can find on ResearchGate, but it's like from a symposium.
So are those people like real creationist things or real?
No, they're from Tel Aviv University. They're perfectly legitimate bioanthropologists. But here's the kicker. Yoel Rock has since then published a separate paper on Australopithecus sediba. He's a co-author on a paper that is talking about Australopithecus sediba and the nature behind it, what kind of hominid it is, etc. And that paper treats it as a perfectly legitimate species, not as a mixed hominin. So Yoel Rock has since backtracked on that idea, leaving Bin as the only individual who thinks that it's two separate hominins. And there is a wealth. When I say wealth, there's several papers that cover just the vertebral column of the Malapa hominins and is basically like, no, this isn't two different hominins. What we're seeing instead is likely two different life histories, because you've got this very unique representation of Australopithecus sediba where you have an adult female and a juvenile male. So these two are very, very different. And a juvenile male is going to have lumbar vertebrae that are indicative of a juvenile, whereas the adult female is going to have adult female vertebra. And this is something that you can like cross-check with the life histories of modern extant apes, and of course humans, which are apes, but you know, I'm using it colloquially. Yeah, that whole thing is bunk, and we're going to get into some serious detail in this next video that I have on why. And Standing's claim about the Lee Burger thing, I haven't seen it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I think that's bonkers. That whole claim is bonkers. I reached out actually to Ella Bin since then, like, and I was basically like, hey, do you still hold this opinion? And she does. Yeah, she still thinks that. Yola Rock does not, though. So what are you gonna do? I don't personally find that very compelling that Ella Bin still thinks that, just because like Alan Fiducia still thinks that the birds didn't evolve from dinosaurs. So, you know.
Yeah. So when is your first paper coming out?
When is what? Oh, my paper?
Yeah, when is your first peer review paper coming out?
Oh God, I don't know. I got to submit my thesis and get it approved first before I submit it to a couple of journals and see if anyone will take it. But yeah, I'm still in the period where I've got, oh God, thousands of cells of like Excel cells that I've imported into R, and I'm trying to analyze it. And I'm not good at working R, so that's where I'm at in my thesis.
So you're not Dr. Gibbon yet, then?
God, no. I'm just getting my master's. I'm not a PhD yet either. I'm not even a PhD candidate yet. I hope to be. I hope to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'll have lots of questions after this is over with. Usually after it happens, like your brain goes blank during the things, and all of a sudden you're like, damn, I should have asked that.
I know. What you can always hit me up on Twitter.
All right. Do you have any, before we go, do you have any future videos idea?
Yeah. I've got a premiere on Monday. I've got it all uploaded and ready to go. It's my genetics video response to the Brain Trust. It's probably gonna be my last one to them, because I don't think they're probably gonna answer the questions that I have, and unless they do, I'm not gonna engage if they're not gonna answer my questions. And I hope to get out a video. Oh God, I don't know that it's going to happen. I really hope I can get a video out tomorrow that's just like a general response to Standing's, the one I was just talking about. That's a general response to Standing's like miscarriage of representing Australopithecus sediba and Homo habilis. But we'll see. Yeah. It may be Saturday.
You're ever gonna finish any of your series?
Oh God, that's another whole thing. Yeah, it turns out the thesis and YouTube thing is hard to juggle. And whenever I'm like, I need to do something today, I need to be productive, I'm always like, I guess the thesis better take priority.
Yeah, schoolwork.
Yeah, if it makes you feel any better, it's the less fun option. I mean, I love my master's program, and I love everything that goes along with that. But I spent probably 12 hours last week just trying to suss out like what variations of Semnopithecus are currently like recognized by by science, and then going backwards to my data, which is from 1995, and trying to parse out whether Semnopithecus entellus is actually Semnopithecus entellus or if it's now something else, which is, you know, par for the course. Primate cladistics is a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, not that, but I have several videos on my hard drive that I gotta edit and upload to do stuff, but lately it's either sleep or work.
Oh God, I know how it goes. It's that really do be like that.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you for being on here today. Hopefully, if we ever have another thing, idea and stuff, we can have a touch your schedule. Oh, that reminds me, you did want to do a thing on? Didn't you want to do something on Sasquatch and the Yeti and stuff? And
oh God, yeah. I really, oh my God, I really want to talk about like the big boy primate cryptids, just because that's a really fun subject to talk about. Hold on just a second now, almost done. Okay, cool, thanks. My food just got here, but yes, I would love to talk about that at some point. Bigfoot is a weird thing, and I really, really like to talk about Bigfoot and aliens for that matter. I don't know. I think it's fun. It's a fun.
The primate aliens.
God, that'd be awesome. But then they wouldn't be primates because they wouldn't be here, unless I don't know. That'd be weird. That'd be an interesting sci-fi topic.
Well, hope to see that your video tomorrow and the one Monday too.
Yeah, perfect. All right. See ya, guys.
Enjoy the randomness. See ya. Bye.